Thanks for joining us, possibly right after your lunch break. So, hi, I'm Bryan Spellman. I'm a level 3 judge from Denver, Colorado. Despite what Hibb said earlier today, he's not the only level 3 here. I've been a level 3 for about a little over a year. And one of the things that I struggled with when I was trying to figure out my learn how to judge was basically knowing what to do. Should I back up? Should I not back up? And because this is one of the most common calls that we get, especially on a Grand Prix floor, is the players have made a mistake, and now what do I do? You know, when can I back up? When can I not? So we've got baby got back ups, which is also subtitled GRVs and how to fix them, or maybe how not to fix them. That's the whole question, is do we fix these or do we not fix these? All right, so one thing to really keep in mind is that the IPG tells us this, and we should all know this, that when you back up, it's actually supposed to be the solution of the last resort. So we try to not back up. The IPG also says that backup should only be applied in situations where leaving the game in its current state is substantially worse than if we were to not leave it in its current state. And one of the key things to take a look at for this is how many decision trees have happened that we're going to have to back up through. So who can tell me what I mean by a decision tree? Not? Yep, exactly, making a choice. So what's an example you can think of in a game of Magic where the players have made a choice? Yes?
Brainstorm.
Okay, because brainstorm involves drawing cards. Okay. So they've seen 3 cards of hidden information and put 2 back to kind of set the next draws of their game up, right? What's another example of what a decision tree could be? Yes? To counter something or not. Excellent. And somewhere right here? No? Okay. One thing I'm always going to look for is if there's, something in the battlefield that's going to allow them to shuffle the library, especially if we're backing up their card draws. Something to really be aware of. Yes. Yep. Basically, anytime any player's made a decision, the more opportunities for decisions the players have had, the less likely we are going to be to back something up. So a good backup is going to result in a situation where the information the players have gained is going to make no difference. So the lines of play are going to be the same, except for the fact that there was an error that is now fixed. Yes. Yeah, you can't be in here, Frank. Sorry. So again, a good backup is going to be where the game is basically at the state it would have been in any way, except that we fixed some error. What that means is commonly it makes us just want to fix the error and not actually fix going through and doing the backup and then playing forward again if we're sure we're going to be in the same state. So why would if I know that the player's made this mistake and I'm going to back up to the point of error and then I'm going to fix that mistake and then let them play again forward, and I'm confident 100% that the end result's going to be exactly the same as the same line of play, same choices, everything, why can I not just fix whatever the error is and leave the game as it is? Why not?
Because the rules say it.
Okay, the rules say I can't. That's good, but why would the rules say that? Yes?
You don't want to take the option away from the players, whether or not you feel that their decision will be the same.
Exactly. So no matter how sure I am, there may be something that does change as a result of fixing the error. Which means because there are decision trees, decisions could change. And again, that's why we have to be careful with how many decision trees there are before ever backing up. So in order to perform a backup, we have to reverse everything. So not just part of the things, but everything. Not omitting any parts of the sequences or reordering parts of sequences. So how would I back up somebody drawing a card? Random card from their hand back on top. Okay? Yeah, so I can't just have them choose which one goes on top. That's very important. So yeah, just a random card back on top. Unless this card is something that's been legally known to only, if a card's been legally known to only one player, then it's not going to be considered random. And if it's been known to those, we can return it to the appropriate location after shuffle. So for example, if they have scried to the top or to the bottom, and I'm going to put any random cards back on top or bottom, and I'm going to do any shuffling, I'm going to take that one card out of the mix when I do the shuffling and put it back in. Yes?
What you were trying to say a second ago, though, is like, if the top card had been revealed to something, and then I drew that card, we're not going to reverse that back up by putting a random card coming in back on top. We're going to put that card back.
Only if you know exactly which card that is. So if it's in your hand and you know the identity, but your opponent can't verify which card that is,
But if it was
then you can't
revealed
do
at
it.
some point.
Sure. If it's revealed, like if it was revealed due to I can't think of a card. There we go. Yeah. Cursor was in place on the top card of my library. I knew what I was going to draw. That's not a random card because both players actually knew that's the one that I drew. Okay. So that means if we are backing up through a card draw and both of us agree what the top card I just drew was, that's going to be the card we put back on top. Of course, I just mentioned a little bit earlier, any effect that's going to allow us to shuffle the library is something we should really consider before backing up. So if there are fetch lands in play, are we likely to back up or not to back up? If the backup involves going through a card draw, then we're very likely to not back up. I don't think I've ever actually done a backup through a card draw when there's a fetch land in play that I can think of. Very rare is that going to happen. If it doesn't involve the drawing of a card, the fetch land might not be as important. Through and a shuffle effect, probably don't want to back up. As I mentioned before, it's really tempting to just fix any game rule violations that we have, but it's very important that we handle these consistently. And why would I say that? Okay. Right, we don't want to, we try to avoid that when the players tell us, yeah, but this other judge did it this other way, which we hear a lot just about everywhere. And you want to make sure that if anything is happening in Texas at a tournament and in Germany in a tournament and players mess up the game in the same way, we want the fix to be the same regardless of where they are in the world. That's the whole reason that the IPG exists in the first place. And that's why it tries to codify a lot of the common things that happen. And we still have to have humans in here and be judges for the things that aren't necessarily going to fit into that mold. But yeah, it's very important to handle this consistently. So there are a couple times when we're going to fix a game rule violation, and we are actually going to just make a particular fix without having to back up. Who can tell me what those might be? Yes.
Something was not moved to the correct zone.
Okay.
Someone didn't draw a card when they were supposed to. Someone didn't discard when they were supposed to. And the fourth one always eludes me.
There's two left. Two main categories left. Yes.
Somebody have something.
That's not one of the ones we can just fix by default.
No, that's just incorrect. It's the incorrect.
What's that? Right, didn't make a choice. And there's one more. The one that everybody almost always forgets. Nope, that would fall under mistriggers. Yep. The other one is if the order of blockers or damage assignment has not been declared, then you have to fix that. So, well, first, one part that people tend to forget about this one is that it says, if the infraction falls into one of the following categories and only into that category, perform the fix specified unless a simple backup is possible. Somewhere else in the IPG it says that if the backup makes it smoother, then you can actually do a small backup before applying any of these partial fixes, default fixes. And the default fix, the first one was if a player made an illegal choice, including not making a choice, for a static ability that generates a continuous effect, and that's still in the battlefield, then they have to make a choice now. So what's an example of this? Trinity Nemesis, okay. If you're playing with multiple players, because usually they're assuming it's the opponent. You can. Pithy Needle, yep. So yeah, we have Pithy Needle, and then in standard, the Sorcerer's Spyglass. Those are both cards where this could come up. So that's why I said if it's multiple players, then it's there. And if you don't choose an opponent, if you don't specifically choose yourself, then yeah. Technically, the way the card's worded, you're right. You could do either player, but because of most one-on-one tournament play, if it's played, it's just assumed it's your opponent. The second one was if a player forgot to draw cards, discard cards, or return cards from their hand to another zone, they do so. An example of this was like Brainstorm or Pull from Tomorrow. And if an object is in the wrong zone due to it being, due to the zone change being missed or to it just being put into the wrong zone during a zone change, the identity of the object was known to all players, and it can be moved with minor disruption to the current state of the game, then put it in the correct zone. So usually when we talk about this rule, we just say something's in the wrong zone. These other parts are really important because one, known to all players, and two, minor disruption to the game state. So examples like right now, both of these cards, Magma Spray and Incendiary Flow, should put a card into exile, and so it's in the graveyard. And we discover this later. We can just take the card from the graveyard, move it into exile. And then if damage assignment order has not been declared, the appropriate player chooses that order. Usually this means that there are multiple blockers and there's an attacker, and someone has tried to do some effect, but they haven't actually chosen the order of the blockers, and it's going to matter. For example, if you have things with Enrage or effects that are going to pump a creature. All right, so for each of these fixes, you can do a simple backup if it's going to make the fix smoother. And then if none of these fixes are going to apply, then we can actually consider doing a backup. Or leave the game as it is. So basically it means this is our flow chart. We look and see, hey, do we have an allowable fix? If we do, fix it. If we don't, back it up. And if we decide to back it up, then yep, go for it. And if not, then just keep on playing, right? It's just that simple, except it's not. So we're going to look and see if we have an allowable fix. And if so, we're going to apply that fix if it makes sense to apply it. And if not, then we're going to look and see if we want to back up. And so the best practice for actually backing up is to describe to the players the steps you're going to do to perform the backup before you actually do it. Why is that?
They always say, oh, well, this happened too.
Right, because more times than you would expect, as you're describing the steps to them, like, oh, wait, this thing also happened. And that thing that also happened might make you decide you shouldn't back up. So always decide how you're going to do or tell them how you're going to back up before you actually do it. The other thing that can come out of that is that you want to give them a chance to appeal if you're in a Grand Prix type environment. Give them a chance to appeal before performing the backup. Because if you're backing up through card draws, shuffle effect, whatever it's going to be really too late for the appeal to make a difference if you wait until after all the steps are done. So my standard practice is to tell the players, all right, we're going to back up. Here are the steps I'm going to do to back it up. Did I miss any? And then they say, no, you didn't. And then ask them, do any of you want to appeal before I do this? And when they say no to that, then I'm going to go ahead and back up. I don't normally take calls on the floor of big events by asking if they want to appeal, but this is an exception where I will, just because if they try to appeal after the backup, it causes a whole lot more problems. Make sense? All right, so let's get in a couple examples to see if we would back up or would not back up. So player A casts a Metallic Mimic and forgets to name a creature type. And then player A passes the turn. The other player passes the turn too. They get back to player A. Player A casts a zombie and starts to put a counter on the zombie. At this point, player B says, wait, you didn't name zombies. And they call a judge. So you're taking this call at a competitive REL tournament. Tell me what happens. Yes. Okay, so you're saying we should just, right at this point, rewind and then name the card, name the type zombie before they cast it.
I guess he's proposing that the rewind makes it smoother.
Okay. Okay, so it'd be a response when they are casting it. Okay.
Go one step further in that case and rewind before he casts it, because he might not want to cast it and name something else.
He was saying to rewind back to the point where he put the zombie on the stack. And you were asking if it makes more sense to rewind before the zombie's being cast. And the other option is to rewind all the way to when the card was played and it should have been named, or to apply the default fix and just say, this is the choice, right? So what's everybody's opinions? Default fix, okay. Default.
So with the default fix, the new zombie's not getting a counter?
If they fix it after he would cast it and name one then the zombie would not get a counter. If you rewind it to the point where it was being cast, then it should have gotten the counter. So tell me your opinions and why you think that's the way it should be. Okay. So the exact IPG said that you could perform a simple backup or apply the default fixes and then go in and do like the not so simple backups, right? So I think there could be an argument here made for either one of those, either do a simple backup so it gets the counter or not gets the counter. However, is anybody wondering why player B has brought it up here as opposed to when they when it was cast, or when the Metallic Mimic was cast? So this actually happened at a Grand Prix a few months ago when Zombies Metallic Mimic was pretty big. And I talked to the judge on the floor who took the call, and he just applied the default fix, and that was that. And then we started talking more, and the question came up as to, well, do you think player B knew that he should have named something when he cast Metallic Mimic?
And he was angle shooting, trying not to get him to get the counter?
It's possible.
I mean, I could have also been waiting to see whether I drew a zombie or a cat. I mean, that's not the way decks work.
Right. So one thing to always remember is that every call we take is an investigation. Meaning we want to ask questions to find out, did player A forget to name it accidentally or on purpose? And did player B forget to, or know they should have named it and not pointed out, and if so, why? So let's say that A is playing zombies and definitely knew that they always name zombies when they played that card, and they told you that, well, whenever they play at home, they never name anything because it's always zombies, so it's pretty obvious they just don't have to. So then we talk to player B and ask them, why did you not point it out when this happened? And what do you think player B says at this point? One of the most common ones that I get in this situation is when they say, well, it's a trigger and you missed it. And that's one thing that I've started to become pretty wary of when I hear that, because I think players have started using that as a little bit of an excuse, since triggers can be missed, but anything that's not a trigger really can't. And so it actually is their responsibility to point it out. So the next question is this person cheating? So what has to be true for something to be cheating?
They have to know it's against the rules, and they have to be taking advantage of it.
Yep, so they have to be attempting to gain advantage, and they have to be aware that what they're doing is illegal. So based on the actual, so I went back to this table where this had happened once the judge had told me the call, and I went and actually talked to the players. The conclusion was that they both had no idea they were doing anything wrong on purpose, so there was no cheating. But it is just important to always remember that that is a possibility, and always think about asking more questions for your calls. I always have started telling my teams at Grand Prix that we rush to take a call, and then we rush to get through the call. That's like what always happens. So getting there fast, definitely do that because you don't want the players waiting for a while. But once you're at the table, once you're talking to players, if it takes you a few extra questions or a few extra seconds to think about it, just think for a second, what other questions should I ask here to make sure I know what's going on? Is there a question that I can ask that if I do, it's going to change the ruling I'm going to make? And then ask that question. It's going to take your calls maybe 10, 15, maybe 30 seconds longer. That's fine. Take the time to get the best answer for the players, and because we're in such a speed from trying to get to the call really quick that we just keep doing that. And so slow down once the call actually happens. All right, so let's have think of this example where player A cast Assassinate on a Sarah Angel. So the Sarah Angel has Vigilance, can't be tapped, and Assassinate says destroy target tapped creature. So this happens, they go through the second main phase, and then they realize, oh wait, I couldn't have done that. And they call you over to the table. So what are you going to do?
Was the Sarah Angel represented as tapped?
No. They just thought it said destroy a creature, yeah. This was in the first main phase. There was an attack of 2/2 bear, and then they started playing something in their second main phase and realized, wait, I couldn't have done that. Yes.
Active player rewind if you couldn't have done it?
Yes. And does it change your results if it's the active player or the inactive player that realizes it?
Just a little bit more investigation.
Yep, more investigation, exactly. So just rewind to what point? Yeah, and first main phase, cast Assassinate, then attacked, and then in the second main phase, realized they could not have assassinated the Sarah Angel. Which is what? All right, so the spell's cast, it couldn't tap that creature, so the spell goes to the graveyard, right?
Hand.
Yep, goes back to the hand. Untap the mana, put the spell back to the hand.
The Sarah Angel back.
Sarah Angel back into play. And then, do they have to attack with the same creatures that they attacked with before? No. Okay. So what if this happened where we did the Assassinate on the Sarah Angel, had an attack, and then played something fancy in the second main phase, passed the turn. Next player drew a card, went through their attack phase, goes back to the first player, and then we realize that this should not have happened.
Too bad. You messed up.
So rewind or not rewind? There are no fetch lands in play.
He said
Good
they-
question, though.
He said they played something fancy during the second main phase, which I assume is something fancy and can't be rewinded through.
They played something boring in the second main phase. How about that?
But then we're past the first main phase for the next turn, so we passed like an entire. I lose it.
So is that turn cycle phrase still in this rule?
It's a good rule of thumb.
It is a good rule of thumb, yes. I think it depends a lot on how many creatures are on the battlefield, and if there's each person has one card in hand at this point, there's one creature on the battlefield, that's the one that attacked, you might consider backing up. But once you've gone through two people drawing cards, no matter what's on the field, even if fetch lands or no, I really don't want to back that up.
And the fact that they're like, you oftentimes look at a field on stuff like this and like, well, he couldn't have done that, and it's like, well, you should have noticed.
That's one thing to point out is it is the responsibility of both players to keep track of the game rules. Yep. Oh yeah, you still document it. Yes, definitely. Oh, good. Yeah, even if you're not backing up, you're still giving them a warning for a game rule violation. And why are we giving the warning for the game rule violation? Yep. Because if the player does this multiple times during the end, we can see that they've always done an assassinate on an untapped creature, well, they're starting to try to get away with something, right? Well, no, they just, yeah. Same thing as Doom Blading a.
It wasn't like I tapped it, but I attacked inadvertently.
Right. Yep. How would that change your ruling if it was?
Because the point of error may actually be the turn before when the Sarah Angel was tapped.
Yep. Yeah, most of it changes the investigation part. All right, so let's say you walk up to a table and you see a Geist of St. Traft. And on that Geist, there's a mind control. And this is funny, but I've seen this happen too. And so do you stop this match, or let the players keep playing as playing? And if you stop it, what do you ask them? No. These are the only two cards in the field other than the lands. Well, I cast it and took control of it. 5, 6 turns ago. Oh, you mean it can't? Oh, I didn't even see that. It has hexproof. Crap.
Did it have hexproof bin?
Yes. Yep.
Seems like a simpler situation for the last one. We definitely issue a fraction. We can stop it.
So you just leave the mind control on the creature?
It's not a legal thing for that to be on hexproof. It was just illegal to put it on there.
So we just let them play as is? 5 turns, 6 turns? They've got an ensnaring bridge in play. Yeah. Yes.
We have to do something because there's an aura enchanting something that can't properly be enchanted.
Is
It can be,
Leave it
just
all
can't
as is,
target
we're
it.
good.
If that said pro blue, then it wouldn't be.
so if this creature has pro blue, what are you doing? Because of state-based actions, yes. Yep.
I might ask them if they're in further attempts to target the guys that take traffic or something. Because if the answer is yes, and the player who has the mind control pointed out to the other player he can't do that because it has hexproof,
Then we have lots more questions to ask that player, right?
That's why the person's playing Geist if they're not just going to go no.
No. So in kind of a similar vein of this, I actually walked up to a table at a modern tournament and walked past. Both players have a whole lot of islands on each side of the battlefield, and both players have a standstill in play. So we, look at the graveyard, and there's no way these cards just magically got shown, told into play or something. So we asked the players, how did this happen? And at once, they both looked at me and said, well, Judge, standstill doesn't trigger standstill. Yes. Sorry, Legacy. This is why you don't talk to judges, all right? Any format that's not limited, I don't care about. So yeah, they. So what are you going to do in that situation where they've just been doing draw go for quite a while?
They're living in a new reality.
They've created their own reality, live in it. Basically, yes. It was actually, I think, at the point where the person who cast the first spell was probably going to lose because of drawing cards and milling themselves. So, but yeah, players can do pretty impressive things. All right, so this was one of the first Star City Opens that I ever went to as a judge that I also managed, or as a head judge, and I managed to actually get a death threat because of this ruling. Oh, no, next ruling, but anyway, this happened in the same tournament. Player A plays a land and an Elite Vanguard. Player B plays a land and passes, and then A plays a land, pass, B plays a land and a Bear Cub, land, and Divination. At this point, player A says, Judge, my opponent has too many cards in their hand. I think they have an extra card. So I went to the table and started trying to figure out what happened. And I looked at the life totals, and the life totals were both at 20. Is there any question that would make you ask based on this series of actions? What's that? Yeah, so I asked, well, player A, why did you not attack on turn 2? And their response was, well, he had the Bear Cub, and that would have blocked it.
Not on your turn, too. You shouldn't have.
So if he plays this turn 1, now it's turn 2, right? So it's easy to attack, and that's why I was wondering why the life total wasn't changed down to 18. Because he said that would have blocked it. So at this point, my conclusion was the wrong player had gone first. As in, player B actually went first. So on their turn 2, they had this bear cub, which lines up to the fact that the elite vanguard could not have attacked. And when I mentioned this to the players, after we counted cards first and realized, oh no, if somebody does have an extra card, but then I asked that question, and then they realized, no, the other player played first. The game is correct, assuming player B actually went first. So the players agree that that's happened, and they weren't very pleased with this being a possibility. And so, are you going to rewind the game here, or are you going to have them keep playing as it is?
The only thing that's gone wrong is the wrong player went first.
The wrong player went first.
They have the choice. Yeah.
So yeah, I told them that this is the way. And the first guy was like,
Count it, go first,
yeah.
and you chose to draw.
and that's what he did. He's like,
I know the answer only because this happened to me at a PBTQ a few weeks ago.
what happened at yours?
It was the finals of the PBTQ, and the person who was seat 8 just said, all right, I'm going first. Players got to about turn 3, then they realized, wait, I'm the higher seed. You should have gone first. And so the ruling was is that the players didn't decide who was going first. It was you have a choice of who's going first when you win the die roll or whatever. And both players agreed that the wrong player was going first, the player that did not win the die roll. So there was no illegal choice or anything.
And so what happened here was the player A told me, wait, or player B said, wait, you're letting my opponent get away with going first when he shouldn't have. And I think I kindly said, well, actually, you let him get away with that. And neither player was happy with this result. This was game 3. They both won 1. And they were we still had like 25 minutes left on the clock. So I said, well, you can just draw this game and play another one if you want. And they looked at me like I was insane. And like, really? We can do that? I'm like, yeah, the first one of you to win 2 wins. So they drew and started over with the correct player going
Why
first.
was Bearcat not happy with going first?
I don't know why the player that he must not have liked it. I don't know why not. He just didn't. I don't know why Bear Cub didn't like it, but he didn't. Yeah.
We offered the draw to the 2 players in our situation, and obviously not both players agreed to that. So we left it.
Yeah. Which usually is what happens. That's what's surprising. But, I did mention that I got a death threat at that Grand Prix, which is because I had a really long investigation trying to figure out the life total discrepancy between 2 players, and it came down to having to actually just pick one player story because it made more sense, but not knowing for sure. And then Jared Silva overheard that player saying, or somebody else overheard it and told Jared, that player saying that when I walked home from the venue that night, they were going to jump me and try to kill me. That was a fun Grand Prix. They didn't do it, but yeah.
Did they get DQ'd?
He had a long talk with them and decided not to, but it was he went into the conversation expecting to DQ them until they decided that they were just blowing off steam and didn't really mean it. But yeah, it was fun to get a death threat at your first GP, right? Or first open, whatever. No. I had the ninjas following me. It was fine, yeah. So I've got one more really fun example for backups. Before we do that, who has a game rule violation experience where you may or may not have wanted to back up and are curious about it or just want to share it with everybody else?
I was playing at the Hunter Burton against Robert Burney. Game 3, he's on the play. He played a turn 3 and turn 4 Reflector Mage against me. Turn 5, we realized he did not have blue mana. And we had a fun experience where they did not end up backing up, and he just got a warning. So I didn't appeal. I probably should have. Looking back, I was tired.
So you said you played it turn 3 and turn 4?
On his turn 5, he was like, oh, I don't have blue mana. And no backup.
Would anybody think you should back up in that situation?
What else has happened?
Touchlands happened. I played a creature my turn 3, he bounced it turn 4, and then turn 5 before he played anything. I'm assuming we finished, I don't know for sure. But the deck had like 16 or 17 sources because it was 4-color rally mirror.
Anybody else? Yes, Joe.
I'll yell real loud.
Got the people playing along at home hear this.
Okay.
So to steal from my own example, Abel is playing a standard PPTQ against Nick. Abel taps 4 planes, says cast Gideon of Ally of Zendikar, and puts a card from his hand onto the table. He then says make a knight, puts a 2/2 knight into play, and says your turn. Then Nick draws for turn, looks at the board, and realizes that the card in play is Gideon of the Trials, not Gideon Ally of Zendikar. They call for a judge, and you discover that Abel had both cards in his hand and just put the wrong one into play. What do? Did he announce what it was?
You said he announced it.
He said Gideon of Ally of Zendikar, but the card he put on the table was Gideon of the Trials. And then he activated a Gideon of Ally of Zendikar and put a 2/2 knight. And he tapped 4 mana. Gideon Ally of Zendikar costs 4 mana.
So
Gideon of the Trials
he's
has 3.
basically done 2 back-to-back GVs.
Is that the one you're asking about?
What are the GRBs?
He
So it doesn't apply
put the
to
wrong
the
spell in his
trials.
stack as a result of it.
Okay.
Even though he announced and paid for the spell he intended to correctly, he put the wrong spell onto the stack and let it resolve. And then activated an incorrect ability from an existing permanent one.
Okay, I see the second GRB. We really care more about the first one in terms of backing up. Is the first one like what the question becomes? What's the first GRB? Do you have any opinions, Bryan?
I do.
Okay. Does anyone else? So you think the first GRB is what?
He put the wrong spell on.
Put the wrong spell on the stack. So he said certain words and then put a different spell on the stack.
Correct.
And just has this extra floater, right?
Correct.
Anyone have a different opinion on what the first GRB is? You think it's just putting a knight into play? Anyone else have opinions?
First priority without announcing early mana.
I mean, that's a good option.
Sure.
But it is a GRB.
So the first year.
Yes, what's the first? Because if we're
I
going
would
to
say-
rewind,
I
we have
would-
to rewind to where the first GRB is, right?
So the order whenever you are casting a spell is I'm trying to remember. Is it announced first and then it's revealed? Or right? Yeah.
Put it from whatever zone it's in on the stack.
Okay. So he announced Gideon Ally of Zendikar, but he revealed the wrong one. Put the wrong spell onto the stack. That sounds like
So I believe that the first GRB is when he made the knight, but I believe that like say I announce brainstorm, but I throw a divination on the table, and then I resolve a brainstorm.
Yeah.
I have a brainstorm in my hand, or I did all along. Then I've just thrown the wrong card down, and there's a simple backup to put that card back in my hand and put the brainstorm down. So you back up to the.
Is that a simple backup?
Is there some backup for that? That one does, because if you resolve brainstorm, it's hard to change them.
Well, okay.
I did the exact same thing as that. And I was playing Blue Moon. I said Mana League, and threw her mana onto the table, and we just resolved it like a Mana League. And I looked at Mana, I was like, oh, I still got a Mana League. Oh, my man. Call the judge, and it was Mana League. We put that there, we put your mana back, and spells still counter. Good. Continue. Here we how that counter. So off that a while ago.
So what do you think, Bryan?
I'm going to switch the cards.
You want Indiana Jones this?
Yep.
Do you believe that it's what you looked up?
No.
No.
He's
So now you deviated.
This shirt is red.
So you're going to deviate in Indiana Jones.
I'm going to switch the 2 cards, yeah.
Okay, so I'll have the first time I've heard it's the supply of the L3. No, I agree. L3s do like to do this. So I will read the answer that I posted. This was a knowledge pool scenario. I know I read it. Yeah.
Let's see. Abel announced and cast 1 spell, but represented it with the wrong card. This is a game rule violation. The first error occurred when Abel put the wrong card onto the stack. We give Abel a warning for game rule violation and Nick a warning for failure to maintain game state. Then the question becomes, do we want to back up or do we want to leave the game how it is? Nothing else has happened. I'm fairly certain that if we back up, we're going to end up with the right cards in play. So we'll back the game up to the point of the error, return a random card from Nick's hand on the top of his library, tap any appropriate lands, remove the Knight token, put Gideon in Abel's hand, and untap Abel's lands. And then I'd address the deviation that we discussed.
So, Joe, what if this was discovered after the player that cast the Gideon had drawn another card? 'Cause now we don't actually know that the Gideon he said he was casting was the one that he had in his hands.
Then we ask him why he said he was casting the other Gideon, and I am willing to rewind and believe him. Like, he can either lie to me, and if I believe he's lying, then we have another problem.
Rewinding, I have to rewind in order. What if you randomly put the Gideon ally Zendikar back on top?
If we trust that the Gideon was there, it's not included in that random set.
If he just said Gideon.
Sure, Gideon, saying Gideon make a knight is very different than explicitly saying what card.
And that's what I said.
Yeah.
Should the investigation involve asking the opponent what card they believe was cast?
Yes, but presumably, like, based on the information that was given, we're going to believe that the opponent thought he put a Gideon ally.
Yes, but what if they didn't say allies in the card?
So, for these specific cases, especially for knowledge pool, the words that we use in the scenario represent what the players' opinions are. So both players agree that he said Gideon allies. We can certainly investigate, but
That's why I asked.
yeah, there's certainly lots of room for investigation.
Yes. So you see the problem when we let players play this game, it really messes up everything, right? So let's say that player A has a Green Sun Zenith, and they cast it to put a Glorybringer into play. And then they put the Green Sun Zenith into the graveyard, and then they attack with the Glorybringer, destroying an Oculus, and then B draws a card from the Oculus, which gives them more. They had more cards in hand when this happened, so they have 3, now they have 4. And then they use the Path of Exile from their hand. They may or may not have just drawn from the Oculus to exile the Glorybringer. This sounds crazy, but it's also not far from what actually happened. So.
I know this is a similar scenario, but Green Sun's in natural order, so.
Okay. So what's gone wrong here? 8 things? Which 8?
Did he say he exerted the Glorybringer?
Yes, he did.
Well, at least that's right.
I didn't say it, but he did. It's written down, so it counts. All right, so we know that Green Sun Zenith cannot fetch a Glorybringer, right? So that's one error. And then they put the Green Sun Zenith into the graveyard. So that's another error. And then the attack happens, is exerted, Oculus dies, player B draws a card, and then player B casts a Path to Exile. So are you rewinding this? They caught it as he's about to search for the Path to Exile land. I am probably going to say we don't rewind, correct? So is there anything here that is fixable by one of those default fixes? What is that? What's that? You could rewind? Okay. Would you?
Oh, it just feels ugly to do it.
If you ever think to yourself, this feels ugly to rewind, you probably should not rewind.
Yeah.
So,
It's just, you could, but it's just bad.
sure. And that's why you don't.
Yeah.
But you do get to take the Green Sun Zenith and put it in the correct zone. All right, so let's say I was attacked with a Sword of Feast and Famine, and my opponent discards a card, but I don't untap my lands, and we discover it a turn later. What happens? Sorry, right? What if I untap my lands, my opponent did not discard a card, and we discover it a turn later?
What do you consider it? My turn to your turn?
Yes. Yep. Yep, they have to discard. So we can't go back. If we're not rewinding, then we only can apply the default fixes if applicable or not apply them. And one of those default fixes was if they were supposed to draw or discard, they do so. All right, so this also actually happened a little bit. At one of the last PTQs we had in Denver, a player played an Underworld Cerebus, which says that cards in graveyards can't be the target of, oh, sorry, not that one. When it dies, exile all cards in play, was it return? I can't remember. Return all creature cards from graveyard to the hand. That's the part I want. All right. So return all creature cards from graveyards to hand. So this came into play, and the players returned all creature cards from graveyards to the battlefield. And these cards may have had things that, like, have them reveal a hand, or things that draw cards, or scry, or have all sorts of other effects. And you know how we tell that story about how you caught a fish and it gets bigger and bigger every time you tell it? Obviously this has happened here, but the battlefield had at least 5 creatures on it. And a lot of those had scry effects, draw effects, life-changing effects, look at cards, exile things. Like, it just didn't stop. Like, it was ridiculous. So who's backing up in this situation? Oh, by the way, when they called my floor judge over, there had already been one attack step after this, and then they realized it. What's that? We would not back up, correct. There's no backing up here. So are you going to default fix it? Why are you jumping ahead of me, Joe? So all the cards are, in fact, in the wrong zone, so we just return them to hand, right? Yeah, there's that one little line about you can do that fix unless if it's going to have a minimal impact on the game state. And obviously this is not going to have a minimum impact on the game state. I believe the term FUBAR'd was used somewhere in this investigation, and then they were told just to play as it is. All right, so that's the end of the presentation, and I believe we're basically out of time. I have 2 minutes left, it tells me. So anybody have questions, comments, things they want to add? All right, everybody's experts now, right? Yes.
Have you ever had to do a backup involving chains?
No. I fortunately have not. Though, if it does involve the drawing of the cards part, it's not terrible to do, but I'm not sure why you would do it in most cases. I said, depending on the board, I'd imagine most cases you're not going to back up through that.
I watched, it was at a Grand Prix side event. Through a brainstorm. It took about 10 minutes, but they did it really well. It was
All right.
interesting.
So someone cast brainstorm into chains.
I don't think you rewind through a brainstorm ever, especially not if there's like.
Well, but the information gained is so high, the person realized what happened.
I think they called it when he went to go put 2 cards back, but I don't.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're definitely not going back to the point where they have the choice to cast Brainstorm or not, right? Because that was legal. Oh, he told me I was out of time. And this tells me I'm out of time. The timer he set. No, he just said 0 and you just said 10. I don't know what's going on anymore. Well, then just go and get your stuff started. Get up here. See, anybody have any more questions, or you all just want a quick 10-minute break while Joe gets set up? That one. All right. Thanks, everybody.